Sometimes I just love sitting in the park or at a coffee shop and watching people go about their lives, wondering what is happening in their lives, who they are, what their story is, what they've been through. And of course, in a city like London, which is so busy, there's lots of material for this all the time. Ever since I was young, though, and doing this, one type of person always stood out. The one who looks like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. It's quite distinctive. I always wondered what it meant when I was a kid, when I heard adults saying it. He looks like he's carrying the weight of the world. I'd hear people say it, but of course, as a kid, though perhaps less so these days, you don't have any big connection to what weighty world issues are, so it's hard to understand. But as we grow up, we soon enough find out what it means, and we can recognize that look because we wear it ourselves. It's not just a physical or emotional weight, but an existential one carried in a deep place where there is a real ache for change, for peace that seems impossible in coming, the deep longing for something better, something higher. And that's the main subject of today's episode of the Higher Self Dialogues with me, your host, Anton Jarrett. For the spiritually minded and opened, the idea and reality of another world, a higher dimension of being and living, is not so remote. Depending on our own experience and trajectory of initiation, we may, to a greater or lesser degree, know this higher domain intimately. And for many spiritual people, as well as religious, who may equally have a lesser or greater degree of feeling and awareness about a higher reality in the language of their traditions, this can present a challenge of longing and aching. You know and feel there is a higher world, a better world than this one, and it can create the feeling of really not wanting to be here, or the feeling of impatience for this life to be over with, or as detachment from everything that's going on. It's a kind of soul weariness, and I think that in the face of more tumultuous, testing times, this is more pronounced. The more suffering you experience or see around you, the wearier you can feel. To me, this speaks to a very deep longing for a life of peace and harmony, and deep frustration at the way life turns out, to achieve and realize quite the opposite of this. And you don't have to be spiritual or religious to feel what I'm talking about here. I think everybody can tap into a longing for peace and harmony, because this is at the core of the human spirit, and this is the keynote of what the higher self is willing and wishing for its being. It's just so darn difficult to make it happen. The frustration arises because of the mismatch between the desire, which is sacred, and the result, which is a total distortion of that which is sacred. By this I mean the paths that we take, either individually or collectively, to fulfill that desire. We seek peace and harmony, but we don't create it. Instead, we create chaos, disharmony, and conflict, and do things that involve a lot of pain and harm to others and ourselves. We want to live lives that are free from threats of war or crime, but we create social and political situations that set people up for failure, or that create gross inequalities that leave countries wanting. We decry that our societies are becoming more polarized, but we create and develop the systems and tools that make this an inevitability. The world doesn't play ball, and it's natural to feel like, I want out. That's it. I don't want to play anymore. But this is misplaced. The fault isn't with the world, but the part that we play in it. And that's where I found myself at times, getting so frustrated at the world, but failing to see what is being mirrored and where the call is, focusing instead on the wish to leave, on the frustration. I know for a fact that there is a world, a whole dimension that is frictionless and harmonious, a world that would be a utopia to most eyes, an impossibility. But I know it's there, and I've been guilty of feeling myself like, you know what? I'm done with this place called Earth. I give up trying here. I'll wait till future lives when conditions are more favorable. I've written this life off, written the whole planet off, and have kind of packed my bag, waiting for the train out of here. But just as much, I've realized the distortion in this way of thinking and feeling, and it is a distortion. How in reality, what I'm doing is I'm just wishing to skip meals that are actually good for me, even if I don't like the taste. I personally don't really like sour foods or foods with slimy textures, so if I get those things on my plate, I tend to push them to the side. By wanting to check out of Earth early, I know that I'm trying to control what I eat and not take in what is good for me, what I actually need. If you're spiritually or religiously minded, you know, at least intellectually, that the hard challenges of life, that all the current crises unfolding all around us are just hard lessons that are ultimately good for us. We know this. The difficulty is in tasting and even enjoying the bitter, sour, slimy food that we're being served or that we participate in creating ourselves. It's in seeing the goodness in that which we don't normally think of as good. The feeling of wanting to leave a world that we don't feel we fit in is understandable, but the feeling arises at least in part because of a big distortion that we have in relation to suffering, to the things of life and experience we don't like. We think it would be a distortion to try and like things we don't like, but there's a distortion involved here too. It's not about trying to force ourselves to like bitter tastes and say, that's nice, when it's not. Nor is it about doing some intellectual gymnastics and trying to see the good in the suffering or to see the suffering as an evil to vanquish. I'm not going to try and see the slimy mushrooms as tasty or nice just because other people seem to enjoy them and trick myself into enjoying them. No, instead, I think it's much more about understanding the benefit that the bitter things in life, that the sufferings have. It's about genuinely perceiving the warm occurrence under the cold and seeing not just with the mind, but mainly with the heart and intuition, that the true benefit and gold under the suffering is transformation, evolution, and the creation of the humaneness on which the higher world that we envision is built. I think the primary context for seeing this is in your own life. And if you have anything in your own life that proves to you beyond doubt that you've got some gold from suffering, then this is a powerful demonstration of the principle, and you can use that to make more gold. Yes, it is difficult. If you've only got a bit of gold, then you can't turn the world's suffering into a shining light, no matter how much you try. You can't do it. And you can't even perhaps turn the main keynotes of suffering in your own life into gold just yet. But demonstrating the principle can be enough to build some faith, some hope, some encouragement that yes, it is the case that good can come from this or that, even if you can't see it straight away. And just as this plays out in our personal lives, it plays out on a global scale too. If we look around, we can see how bitter the food is that we're being given by a world experiencing different kinds and scales of crisis. Societies that are nominally wealthy struggle to make real change and progress because they're economically disabled. They can't grow quickly enough to provide for all the needs and wants of its citizens or deal with all the problems that they face, causing great unhappiness for those in the society and other societies dependent on them for aid. The great ignorance that exists in the bastions of wealth and power about how the world deeply works, and that exists also in the halls of contemporary knowledge upheld by materialistic science, means that solutions can only be temporary. But even these are rarely put in place, and the world just groans under the weight of the consequences of its actions and is blinded and deafened to advice and support that would help it due to causes that it has little ability to understand. But this situation is precisely one that will awaken the abilities that will lead it out of darkness in the first place. And that's where the gold is. The collective soul of the planet, the higher self of the planet, is breaking through, is going through its own dark nights of the soul. And we are part of that. And here's the call. It's a call not to escape, but to be present, to be part of the transformation, to help usher in the changes that are birthing. And in many ways, the higher self and consciousness is the fruit of transformation from suffering. We're living through a labor which is messy, painful, and unpredictable. But there's a natural order to it, a deep purpose to how it manifests, even if it's unclear. Giving birth is painful, right? We all know that. But there is joy afterwards. We are midwives to the world's pain. The temptation to run out the door as soon as the contraction starts, that's real and strong. The divine, God, the absolute, whatever you want to call it, the source of all being, understands this, knows this. But we can know it too and be there helping to deliver the new life that the current difficulties are ushering in. If we stay with it for the duration, then the weight of the world just gets a little bit lighter for everyone. The midwife can't take the pain away, can't stop the process, but we can be with it and we can change the nature of the birth that's happening. It's about being calm when everything around you says to panic. It's about deepening understanding and wisdom when the problems seem too hard to fathom, when the challenges seem too great, and when giving up seems logical. And if more and more of us can do that, the pangs are eased a little bit. Thank you for listening. That's all for this week. I will see you next time on the Higher Self Dialogues. Until then, goodbye.